The smell hit me first. Antiseptic and something floral underneath it, like someone had tried to cover up the truth with air freshener. I woke up in a bed that wasn't mine. White ceiling, white walls, a window with a latch I couldn't reach, and a woman in scrubs standing by the door who smiled at me the way people smile at someone they've already decided can't be trusted. "Good morning, Maeve," she said. "How are we feeling today?" I didn't answer. I was still running through the last thing I could remember clearly. My sister Renee's voice on the phone, telling me she'd set up an appointment. "A therapist," she'd said. "Someone who could help with the grief after Mom died. She'd offered to drive me. She'd seemed so caring, so gentle that I hadn't even thought to ask where exactly we were going." That was 3 days ago, or maybe 4. Time had already started to blur around the edges. The facility was called Crestwood Behavioural Health, which I only knew because I'd seen it printed on a paper cup someone left on my nightstand. Private. The kind of place where the carpets are thick enough to muffle screaming. The kind of place that doesn't take insurance, only direct payment from whoever signed you in. My sister had signed me in. I want you to understand something before I go any further. Renee was my person. She was 8 years older than me, and she'd been more mother than sister for as long as I could remember. When our actual mother got sick, it was Renee who drove her to chemo. When Mom passed, it was Renee I called at 2 a.m, crying so hard I couldn't make words. She held me at the funeral. She told me she'd always be there. I believed her. I believed her completely. My name is Maeve Callahan. I'm 31 years old. 6 months before I ended up in that room, I had a normal life. I worked as a paralegal at a mid-sized firm in Columbus, Ohio. I had a 1-bedroom apartment I'd decorated myself, a rescue cat named Biscuit. No, wait, that's someone else's stories. My cat was named Fig, a ridiculous name for a ridiculous cat who knocked things off counters for sport. I had a savings account and a 401(k) and weekend plans and friends I texted to late at night. And then Mom got her diagnosis. Stage 4, pancreatic. The next 7 months were a before and after line I didn't even see coming. We moved her to our childhood home in Westerville. Renee and I took turns staying with her, but I quit my job to be there full-time. I told myself it was temporary. I told myself I'd find another position when things settled. I told my boss, who was kind about it, that family came first. What I didn't tell anyone was that by the time Mom passed, I had under $12,000 left in savings, no job, no income, and nowhere solid to land. What I also didn't tell anyone, because I hadn't fully processed it yet, was what Mom had told me in her last lucid week. She'd called me to her bedside alone. Renee was downstairs making soup. Mom's hands were papery and cool when she took mine, and she looked at me with those tired eyes and said very quietly, "There's something in the blue trunk, Maeve, for you. Don't let anyone rush you into anything before you read it." I thought she was confused. The morphine made her drift sometimes. I squeezed her hand and said, "Okay, Mom, I will, I promise." I told myself I'd look later. She passed 2 nights after. I forgot about the blue trunk. In the shock and the flowers and the casseroles and the paperwork, I completely forgot. The will reading was 3 weeks after the funeral. I was still hollow, the kind of tired that lives in your bones. Mom's attorney, a dry-voiced man named Mr. Beckford, laid it out in his conference room with a box of tissues on the corner of the table. Renee got the house. I got the life insurance policy, $240,000, and the contents of a storage unit on Morse Road that I didn't even know existed. Renee's face went very still when he read the insurance figure. Not surprised, just still, like she'd known the number and was doing math in her head. After the meeting, she hugged me in the parking lot and said all the right things. "We'll figure out the estate together. You should take your time. Don't make any big decisions." She said we should meet for dinner that weekend to talk through next steps. She said she loved me. I believed her. Again, dinner was at her house, not a restaurant. She'd made pasta, my favourite since childhood, the baked ziti with the crispy edges. Her husband was travelling for work. It was just us, the way it used to be. We opened a bottle of wine and I actually felt for the first time in months like things might be okay. I remember finishing my second glass. I remember her refilling it without asking. I remember telling her about Mom's blue trunk comment, how I'd meant to look and hadn't. I remember Renee going very quiet. I don't remember anything after that. The doctor at Crestwood was named Dr. Foss. He was 50-something, soft-spoken, with wire-rimmed glasses and the practiced calm of a man who had never once been on the wrong side of a locked door. He told me I'd had an acute psychological episode and had been brought in by a concerned family member who had power of attorney for medical decisions. I didn't know my sister had power of attorney. I'd never signed anything like that. "I want a phone call," I said. "That's my right." "Of course," he said, in a tone that meant not yet. "I want to stop and tell you something. I know how this sounds." As a woman waking up in a facility, claiming she was put there against her will by her own sister, that is exactly the kind of story that gets dismissed. I know that. I was a paralegal. I understood in a detached way how systems work. I also understood, in a very undetached way, that I was alone in a room with a lock on the outside, no phone, and a doctor who nodded warmly at everything I said while writing things down. The second day, I stopped arguing and started watching. There was a nurse named Patty who worked the morning shift. She was the only one who met my eyes like I was a person rather than a patient. She brought me an extra blanket without being asked. She didn't say much, but she didn't look through me either. On the third morning, she set a cup of coffee on my table and lingered a beat longer than usual. "Your chart says you're here voluntarily," she said, straightening the cup. "I'm not," I said. She didn't respond. She picked up the tray and walked to the door, but before she left, she set something on the edge of my nightstand. A folded piece of paper, so small it looked like trash. Then she was gone. Inside, if you have someone you trust, the phone at the end of the East Hall is not monitored before 6 a.m. I lay awake until 5:45. I called my best friend from college, a woman named Isadora Iz. She picked up on the second ring, even half asleep, and I talked fast because I had maybe 10 minutes. I told her where I was, what I could see from the window, that there was a Sunoco station visible from the East Hall, that the sign outside said Crestwood. I told her about Renee. I told her I needed a lawyer and I needed her to find the blue trunk at Mom's storage unit before anyone else did. Iz didn't panic. That's the thing about Iz. She was pre-law before she switched to accounting, and she had the kind of brain that organises itself under pressure. She just said, "Got it. Don't call again until I call you." She called in 2 days. The facility had to release me for an emergency legal consultation. Iz had contacted an attorney named Ms. Varga, who filed a writ questioning the legality of the admission documentation. When Dr. Foss showed Ms. Varga the power of attorney my sister had submitted, Ms. Varga looked at it for about 45 seconds and said very quietly, "This is not a valid signature." I looked at the document. My name, my handwriting, or something close to it. But not mine. The date on the form was 2 months before Mom died. I'd been in Westerville that entire week, barely leaving the house. I had receipts, I had texts, I had a pharmacy log showing I'd picked up Mom's prescriptions 3 times that week. I had never been to that notary. I was out in 72 hours. I sat in Ms. Varga's car in the parking lot and shook for about 10 minutes straight. Iz was in the back seat with her hand on my shoulder, not saying anything, which was exactly right. When I stopped shaking, I asked, "The trunk, did you find it?" She had. Mom's storage unit was packed with 30 years of accumulated life. Holiday decorations, boxes of old VHS tapes, furniture she couldn't bear to throw away. The blue trunk was in the back, under a twin mattress and 2 broken floor lamps. Iz had photographed everything inside before touching anything. That was her accounting brain, document first. Inside the trunk, a folder of documents going back 20 years, bank statements, a letter in Mom's handwriting addressed to me, and something I wasn't expecting at all, a copy of a trust document, a trust that had been established in my name by my mother without Renee's knowledge. The life insurance payout was only part of it. Mom had quietly saved for 12 years, small transfers, cashier's checks, a brokerage account in a credit union in a different county. She'd worked with a different attorney, not the family's. She'd done it methodically, privately, because, and this was in the letter, "I know your sister, sweetheart. I love her, but I know her, and I want to make sure you land somewhere soft." Mom had known the total between the insurance and the trust, just over $400,000. Renee had known too, somehow, or suspected. because when we were at the will reading and she heard 240,000, her face had gone still. But I now understood the stillness differently. She'd been calculating the gap. She'd known there was more somewhere. The forged power of attorney, the dinner with the wine, whatever she'd put in my glass. She'd needed me out of the way long enough to find it first. I want to be honest about the part that came next, because it wasn't clean and it wasn't cinematic. There was no dramatic confrontation where I showed up at her door and watched her face fall apart. I was too exhausted and too heartbroken for that. What happened was, Ms. Varga filed a report with the Columbus PD. A detective named Officer Brandt came to her office and took my statement. He was methodical and careful and didn't seem skeptical, which I'd been bracing for. Iz sat with me the entire time and handed me water when my voice got tight. They brought Renee in for questioning 3 weeks later. I know what she said, because Ms. Varga told me afterward. Renee claimed she'd done it for my own good, that I'd been spiraling with grief, that she'd been scared, that the power of attorney had been signed. She must have been confused about the signature. Maybe she'd filled out the wrong form. She was sorry. She was so sorry. I sat with that for a long time. Here's the thing about being betrayed by someone you love. The anger comes later. First comes a kind of terrible clarity, like when you get glasses for the first time and realize you'd been squinting your whole life. You see all the little moments you'd explained away, the subtle way she'd managed information. The time she'd told you what Mom really wanted, translated through her. The way she'd encouraged me to quit my job, framed as support, generous and loving. You need to be present, Maeve. Work can wait. I'll help you. She'd spent 7 months positioning herself as the one who knew things, as the one to trust. I'd trusted her. The legal process took 8 months. I won't detail every step because honestly it was grinding and exhausting, and there were weeks I didn't want to get out of bed. Crestwood faced a separate inquiry over the admissions procedure. I wasn't the only person asking questions about their documentation practices. Dr. Foss, I learned, had admitted patients under questionable circumstances before. That investigation was ongoing. Renee ultimately pled to a reduced charge, fraud, not the forgery charge that had been on the table. She avoided jail time with a suspended sentence and probation. Ms. Varga told me that was typical given clean record, expressed remorse, strong family support. She also told me I had grounds to pursue civil damages. I thought about it for a long time. I really did. I decided against it. Not because I forgave her. I want to be clear about that. Forgiveness is not the same thing as pretending something didn't happen. But I was 29 months deep into the hardest period of my life, and I was tired in a way that went past bones, down into something structural. I didn't want to spend another 18 years in depositions, living in the wreckage. I wanted to be done. Iz told me that was my call to make, and she'd back whatever I decided. Ms. Varga told me statistically it would likely settle, but the process would still be brutal. I thanked them both and said, I'm done. I'm telling this story now from a 1-bedroom apartment in Clintonville, which is a neighbourhood in Columbus where the trees are old and there's a farmer's market on Saturdays. Fig has claimed the radiator by the window. I got a new job, not paralegal work. I went back to school part-time and I'm 3 semesters into a social work degree because something happened in that facility with Patty and her folded piece of paper and the 5:45 a.m. phone call, and I have not been able to stop thinking about it. I think about who doesn't get to make that call. I think about who wakes up in that white room without an Iz, without a Ms. Varga, without someone to answer on the second ring. Mom's letter sits in a frame on my desk now. Not the whole thing, just one line, the one I come back to when things get hard. I want to make sure you land somewhere soft. I landed, Mom. It wasn't soft, but I landed, and I'm still here, still standing, not because someone saved me, but because I learned, finally, to save myself. That's the thing nobody tells you about betrayal. It breaks you in a way that is also, somehow, the breaking open of something stronger underneath. I didn't know what I was made of before all of this. I do now. If you're in a room right now with a latch you can't reach, keep looking for the East Hall. Keep looking for Patty. Keep looking for the folded piece of paper. It's there. I promise you it's there.